Trekking poles for ultra running. A few years ago, I decided to attempt to tackle some really difficult mountainous 100-mile ultra races. I purchased a relatively inexpensive adjustable length trekking pole with no springs. Initially, I really did not like them at all. I found them to be very cumbersome to pull in and out of my hydration pack, very inconvenient to use, and it didn't take very long to figure out that if I was going to use them properly, what I really needed to do was get used to carrying them with me all the time, even if I wasn't using them. And by that I mean carrying them, letting them kind of float off the end of my fingertips. What doing this taught me during the times where I wasn't really using them and they were just kind of floating off my fingertips was that A, they really don't weigh very much, especially if they're just kind of floating there on your fingertips, going back and forth. And B, that process ended up giving me some valuable biofeedback on my form or technique. If I'm running along with these resting on my fingertips, with this part of the pole forward, of course, and all of a sudden I see the pole flopping around, then I kind of know I need to check my running form. Something's off, I'm really not moving very efficiently. Next thing I learned by using the poles in such a way was that I really was not using the hand straps, and not only was I not using them, I felt like they were, for me, a safety hazard. So if they're just hanging off the end and you're running through some single track, they could snag on branches or weeds or whatever and throw off your stride, maybe even trip you up. The other angle on that issue is if you have the straps around your wrists the way you're supposed to use them, and you do happen to fall, you could get tangled up in your own straps and poles. If by chance I'm going to go down, I want to just be able to drop the pole quick and then use my hands and arms fully to protect myself. The next thing I learned was that I was not going to set the height or length of the pole the way most people would use them. Because I'm running, I should always have my knees bent. And so therefore I figured out my height with my knees bent and set the height of the poles accordingly. What this seemed to teach me was that I wanted the pole height set to where with my knees, with a pretty good bend in my knees, that my hand would be right about at my hip level. And what this allowed was for the trekking pole to not be so much of a crutch. I'm not really using it to push off the ground. It's more of a balance and a way to get much better trail feel through the fingers as opposed to just through the feet. So late into a run or an ultra marathon, if you notice that the poles aren't feeling quite long enough, it's a good reminder to keep those knees bent, which can save a race. I would suggest it takes quite a bit of practice to become efficient at running long distances with poles, and I don't know, even after quite a bit of practice, the first time I ran a really tough mountainous 100K distance, my fingers and shoulders were still pretty sore. And that was with using them nominally. Another thing I started noticing as I started to really enjoy running with the poles in hand at all times was how much safer and more efficient I could do stream crossings and climbing over logs, and even possibly for dealing with wildlife issues or sticker bushes in the trail, or for simply keeping a better balance on trails that are slanted. I noticed that as I brought my upper body, hands and arms and all that feel into my running, I became more attuned to the nuances of the trail. It probably slows me down a little bit, but the increase in safety I think is well worth it. After quite a bit of practice with the cheaper poles, I started realizing that the feel of the rubber and hard plastic handle really wasn't that great. And if I was going to start tackling races that are closer to 40 hours long, it was time to invest in a higher quality, lighter weight pole. For beginners with the poles, I would highly recommend using a rubber tip on the bottom for your safety and others. That first set of trekking poles was maybe $40 or $50. I went a little over $100 to get the fixed length black diamonds, and they fold up super small to throw in a hydration pack. They have a carbide tip, and perhaps even more important, a really nice comfortable handle with a cork, kind of a wooden cork handle. And for a really, really long distance, especially during cold temperatures, this handle can make quite a bit of difference. Now the black diamonds did come with a really nice strap, but again, after a while, I finally just decided to cut the straps off. I run virtually all of my ultras in Huarache style sandals like this, and while the grip can be pretty good on some of the models, many of my minimalist shoes have, or sandals, have less grip than a typical super trail running shoe might have. So using the poles, say for a winter 50K or in any very slippery conditions, the trekking bolt poles combined with the minimalist footwear, it's a good combination, except in the case of sandals where I have to be pretty accurate with these poles to avoid scratching or poking holes in the tops of my feet. Out of 17 starts at the 100-mile distance, I've had 4 DNFs, did not finish races, and at all of those races I was carrying trekking poles. On the plus side, for each of those 4 DNFs, I finished injury-free and got incredibly great workouts. In terms of success at some really tough 100-mile races, this one, the Superior 100 miler last fall, and this one for the Kettle Moraine 100 in Wisconsin this past spring. I ran 29 and a half hours at the Kettle Moraine 100 with poles in hand the whole way, and just over 37 hours with poles in hand at the Superior 100. There's really no way to know if I would have been able to finish those races without the poles. Who knows, I might have even been faster, but many runners do tend to fall, often sustaining wrist and hand injuries. I do feel like I fall way less often, far less often if I'm working with the poles. Okay, that's probably enough about my safety in terms of running with the poles. This video would not be complete without a discussion on other people's safety and trekking pole etiquette. Now, honestly, here in the USA, many runners do not like trekking poles. You would think I was running through the woods with an assault rifle sometimes when people see the poles in hand. So, some basic tips. At the beginning of a race, when there are a lot of runners around, I try to keep the poles folded up, not in use until the pack sort of breaks up a little bit. And if I'm on single track with oncoming runners, I will want to put both poles in the hand furthest away from the oncoming runner and sort of pull the poles out, maybe slow down just a little bit, go a little bit extra off the main trail into the grass. And if there's a runner behind, just be extra conscientious to get off the trail, let them pass, get your poles out of their way. And something else I need to get better at is, as I'm coming into an aid station, I would recommend you fold up the trekking poles and just get them out of the way. When there's lots of runners and volunteers at aid stations, these can be a hazard. One more thing to consider relative to these poles is if you sign up for a race, or before you sign up for a race, check to make sure that trekking poles are allowed. Some parks and some races do not allow trekking poles. Personally, I've not been attacked by an aggressive dog or other animal while out on the trail, but should something like that happen, I think the trekking poles are a good line of first defense. And if I'm running in bear country, oftentimes while I'm swinging the poles off my fingertips, I'll give them a good smack to let any wildlife know that I'm coming. You might sometimes hear me say that running or athleticism is all about awareness. And one of the great things about running with the poles is it increases awareness of the environment. And when you think about how most four-legged animals run efficiently and safely through rough terrain, of course they're using all four legs to sense the ground simultaneously. So of course by using the poles when running upright, I can kind of bring my arms and fingers into the equation, really my whole upper body, while moving through the woods, the mountains, whatever. I believe that increased awareness can make me a better runner, a safer runner, and allow me to just simply enjoy my time in nature more. I hope you find something useful in these videos. If there's a topic you'd like to have me cover, let me know, please. And go get you some of these.